I could feel this really negative presence. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I'm brushing my teeth, just starting to kind of get ready for bed. And as I lay down in my bed, I felt the room just fill up with evil spirits or demons or, whatever you want to call them. Like I just felt like the room was full. There were hundreds of them in there and they hated me and I was terrified. It was such a strong, evil presence.
Hey everyone! As we head into the Christmas season, I just want to say thank you for all the love and support that you've shown my little brand, Memoir. I created Memoir because I wanted to have a physical reminder to always remember the Savior, and I wanted to help people to have something that they can hold close to always remember Him. And it's been so cool to see these pieces out in the world and see how much they mean to all of you and how you love Memoir as much as I do. And if you have supported, I can't thank you enough. There's something for everybody. We have men's jewelry and women's, and also kids coming soon. We are going to be doing some of our biggest sales of the year coming up. So if you've had your eye on something meaningful for yourself or somebody you love, now is the time to check out our website, www.memoirjewelry.com. And again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for all of your support, for anybody that listens to the podcast, for anybody that has supported. I am so grateful for you. And I wanted to wish you a very Merry Christmas. So, one thing about me is I love my naps, like, especially a good Sunday nap after church. That is the best. I just love a cozy nap. The Cozy Earth sheets are so silky and they're soft, and they just make taking a nap just the best experience. My sheets in the past have been cotton, they're really scratchy. The thing that's really nice about the Cozy Earth sheets is they keep me cool at night. My husband loves them. My kids are always wanting to sleep in our bed. We got to kick them out because they love how cozy and soft our sheets are. You can try them today with a 100-night sleep trial. Try them out. If you don't love them, return them hassle-free, but trust me, you're not going to want to return them. They are so nice. There's a 10-year warranty because once you feel this level of comfort, you're going to want it to last. So head to cozyearth.com and use my code COMEBACK for 20% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Comeback Podcast. Because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. So let's go home with Cozy Earth. Okay, Sean, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. You and I worked together for like a couple months. It was like 6 years ago,
Yep.
maybe even longer. I don't know. But
Yeah.
Steve McCall is he's like a brother to me. And I worked for him. He is actually the one that got me into the addiction recovery software space, which has translated into me co-founding my own software company. And one of the things about Steve is he is one of the best humans I've ever known. And so when he reached out to me and he's like, you need to interview Sean on your podcast, I was like, say no more. I will interview Sean on the podcast because if you are recommended by Steve, then I know that your story needs to be shared. So
Awesome. Yeah, I was having lunch with Steve a couple weeks ago. I mentioned your podcast and he's like, "Oh, let me text her. We got to get you on." So I'm glad we're
yes,
able to do this.
yes, me too. Yeah, and I have a little gift for you for coming on the podcast. I know it can be scary. This is a little necklace. It
Oh,
says
awesome.
it says disciple on it. It's really cute, and I mean it's cool. Sorry. It's cool. But yeah, we'll mail it to you as just a thank you for being willing to share your story and coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Happy to. Happy to.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump into your story.
Cool. Yeah. So, um, I feel like a lot of people on this podcast, I was born in the church, was born up in Washington, two great parents, and, moved around a whole lot. And, lived in Washington for about 8 or so years, up in Virginia for a couple years, and then down to Southern California, which is where I grew up, was down in Southern California. And, um, eh, grew up going to church, and we did family home evening every week, and family prayers and family scripture study every night. And, kind of the just doing everything the right way. And, my parents still do those same things. They love it. They're still active. Um, I felt like every couple months, couple years, every so often, I was just like, like church, right? I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to church. And mostly that started in my teenage years, right? Everyone's somewhat of a teenage rebel and doesn't want to do what they're
Yep.
supposed to do, right? Um, but, really where it took a turn was around 13, 14 years old, probably going into freshman year or early into freshman year. I was hanging out with a couple of friends, and my buddy basically said, "Hey, look at this." And we're sitting there playing Madden on his PlayStation or something, and the computer right next to him, he pulled up pornography. Um, and there's four or five of us there, and I tried to look away, but I was just stared at the screen, and I'd never seen anything like that, and was from that moment was just hooked. Like that, I was like, oh my goodness, I need this in my life. I don't know the right way to phrase it, but that was really a pivotal moment. Um, where for the next 13, 14 years, there was this constant struggle and constant battle. But this was kind of, what was it, 2006, 2007. And so at that point, like, I still had to seek it out. It wasn't, nowadays, it, it will find me without me looking for it. But
Hmm.
this is before smartphones. Like, you would still go back into the phone store. They'd be like, okay, we got the flip phone and the brick
Yeah.
phone, and like this is well before smartphones. This was not super easily accessible. Um,
When
and
you're sorry to interrupt, but I just have
no,
to ask, like, when you were exposed to that, had your parents talked to you about like sex or any like had you been prepared for anything around that topic
not
or
not yet. My I remember one specific conversation. I don't remember how old I was. I know it was after this, but I remember one specific conversation with my mom. We were in Utah. She was trying to kind of have the sex talk with me, and it was so awkward. And just more for me than probably for her. But at that point, no. My parents and church leaders and people had basically said, "Hey, watch out for this," but that was it. I knew it was wrong, but I also didn't care,
Mhm.
right? At the same time.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was, that was something that just turned into an immediate struggle, something that I was immediately hooked on. Um, but also had this thought like, oh, like I need to get to my mission and then I'll be good. Um, and then, you go on your mission and you don't have to worry about it really for a little while. And then I came home and pretty quickly fell kind of back into the same routine. But at this point, there's smartphones and it's easily accessible. And if I want to find it, I know exactly where to go. Um,
So, when you're on your mission, is it like I actually was reading a story from somebody else that was saying that exact same thing. Like they thought, I'm gonna go on a mission, this is gonna cure me. And I think that's pretty common
yep.
that missionaries, they think they're gonna be cured by going on a mission. Was it just because it wasn't around, or was it like still something that was on your mind, or how come you were so able to avoid it on your mission?
Well, yeah. So once again, this is before missionaries had smartphones. This is before missionaries had tablets, right? We still had the flip book with the planner, and that was how we planned out our day and what we were teaching. And so I just did not have access to it. But there's a difference between physical sobriety and mental sobriety, right? So I was physically, and sobriety probably means something different for you than it does for me, but there's a difference between just not using and not accessing pornography or not, versus having worked through a lot of the reasons why you go to pornography in the first place,
Mm.
or why you end up using alcohol or drugs, or whatever your outlet is. There's a difference in just not using it versus having worked through some of those problems.
Right.
And for me, the mission was it's not available. But I didn't realize, right? I didn't even know that there were things I needed to work through so that when I came back home, I wouldn't be as tempted, or I'd be able to work through the temptations or understand why they were there.
That makes sense.
But it's very common, because I think the idea is like, oh, if I don't do this for 2 years, I'm good, I'm cured.
Yeah.
But that's not really how it works. But I think that's probably why a lot of men in particular feel like, let me just get to my mission and I'll be okay, or let me just get married and I'll be okay.
hmm
Because that was, once I got home, that was my next, like, oh, it came back, but like once I'm married, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Um, surprise, surprise, that wasn't what happened.
hmm hmm
Um,
So you get home and like that first time that you viewed pornography after getting home, was it like associated with guilt and shame? Were you like, what was that like?
Man, it was a mixture of um, guilt and shame and release and euphoria, and like there was so much mixture of emotions. But the one that really lingered was guilt. Um, it was I don't know the exact time frame, but it was probably within a couple weeks of being home. Um, and I knew that I was right back into, okay, I need to hide this, and I need to, put on a face in these other areas of my life so no one thinks that there's a problem. And uh, I learned how to manipulate and how to talk my way in and out of things and how to not get caught. And it is just so unhealthy. But yeah, primarily I felt so much guilt and so ashamed. And there's a couple of big lies that you are told, by yourself or by Satan, however you want to phrase that. But you're told as you're starting your addiction, or as you're starting, down a path, you're told, hey, everybody does this, which is true. A lot of people do. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do it. Hey, everybody does this. And then the second that you want to tell somebody, the second that you want to come clean, or the second that you want to change, whoa, 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 no one's ever done this before. People are going to judge you. People are going to hate you. They won't look at you the same. They won't respect you, right? All that negative talk. And that was what I held on to for a long time.
hmm Um, so okay, so you get home from your mission, you're like starting to get back into this. So what were you doing at this time? Were you like dating, or where were you at in your life at this point?
Yeah, so I came home from my mission, and then a couple months later I went to BYU, Idaho, and it was just going to school, dating, and um, was up there for about 2 years or so before I came home, did an internship. That's where, when I was home, I met my wife. She was dating a friend of mine. He got a shout out at the wedding. It was great. Kind of a funny story.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I was up there for about 2 years, and just like I mentioned, I was fighting it. It was kind of like, okay, I'm good for a couple weeks or a couple months, and then at the time I wasn't calling it a relapse. Now going to doing 12-step program and different things, right? That's what I would call it now. But I would then relapse, and that guilt and the shame and all that kind of negative self-talk came back in, and it really created this cycle of, I don't trust myself. I'm not good enough. I don't feel loved. I don't feel validated. I don't feel right. And that would send me once again down that same cycle and down that same rabbit hole of, well, when I feel bad about myself or I feel those negative emotions, I know I can go somewhere that's going to shut that out for a certain amount of time. It was a loop. It was a cycle. Um,
Crazy as somebody that's in recovery from drug addiction, how I've learned over the last year of being a missionary in the 12-step program that the way that you describe addiction is it's identical to a drug addiction. Like it is the same feeling, the same thought process. And so like it's just super interesting to hear that it's that same loop of like, I'm sad, I have some void I'm trying to fill, and I have this thing that makes me feel better temporarily. But that thing that makes me feel better temporarily is actually creating a bigger void that needs constant filling.
yep. Yep. And, we'll get to this down the road. But that's where I love the church's addiction recovery program, because it's 12 steps and it doesn't specify if it's for drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol, pornography, gambling, shopaholic, codependency, right? Whatever you want to use it for. We'll get to that more down the road. That's a major part of my story for sure. But, yeah, the way that you feel, whether it's pornography or drugs, it's the same thought process. It's the same, what drives you to it is a very similar thing.
Okay, so you went to BYU, Idaho, you came back, you met your wife.
Yep.
So tell us what happened after that.
Yeah. So, we dated and slash were engaged and got married after a little over a year, which in, LDS standards is like 10 years, right? That was a super long dating and engagement. Um, and so we got married for a little over a year. And I remember, a couple months into it going, oh, I haven't had any temptations. I haven't had any urges. Like, I'm healed. This is great. Cause things were awesome, right? You're in the honeymoon phase and, um, it was wonderful. Um, but then at some point, like Sarah went back to California for a weekend. Um, and, just kind of had, was feeling alone, didn't have many friends up there. The couple that I did have were busy and just had basically a whole weekend to myself, which is always a scary thing when, especially at that time. And, and at some point it was just like, well, I'm alone. I'm, I feel not just I'm alone, but I feel like I'm alone. I feel like there's nobody that I can turn to. There's no one that I can talk to. And it wasn't necessarily I'm struggling with this major thing, but I just knew that there was this source of comfort that I could turn to. And after a little while of being married, I turned back to it and started looking at pornography again. And it started with just like, oh, when Sarah's out of town, I'll use this just when she's out of town. And then it slowly progressed to be a little bit more and a little bit more, and it got out of control. And, that's further down the road, but, yeah, it
Did you
just,
ever talk to her about it, or did you like, had she had any idea that you had ever struggled with it or you were struggling with it at this time?
I told her before we got married that it was a struggle in the past. Um, but I also made it, at that time I was struggling with it still, but I made it sound as though, oh, this is like something that
Yeah.
happened in high school and, not a big deal. Cause I genuinely believe once I got married, I'm fine. That takes care of it. Like I'm
Yeah.
good. I won't need to worry about it. Um, and so like she knew that it was a struggle in the past, but not something I was currently
Mm-hmm.
struggling.
Yeah.
It was always something that I was trying to fight, right? I would go to church every week. I would read my scriptures. I would say my prayers. For the most part, we went to the temple with some regularity. I tried to, this sounds weird to say. I felt like I did a good job of like, okay, I feel like I really repented for that last slip up before we went to the temple. Like I would try to be very conscientious of that and felt like, okay, I'm doing everything that the church tells me I should be doing to help fight this major problem that I have.
Mhm.
And like, I wasn't working with the bishop. I didn't tell Sarah about it, right? I wasn't doing some of those things. Um, but I felt like I was doing everything the church told me to do, as far as like, here's how you fight,
Mhm.
addiction, or here's how um, overcome your hardships and your challenges and trials. And so I was like, it's not working. And there was one night I was house sitting slash dog sitting for my uncle, which, Steve, if you're listening to this, sorry. But I was house sitting for my uncle, and it was late. It was like 2 a.m. I was 24, 25, right? We just stay up late on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And I was just watching TV. Right, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just watching TV. I think watching Netflix or something, and then went to bed. And as I was going to bed, I I could feel this really negative presence. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I'm brushing my teeth, just starting to kind of get ready for bed. And as I like lay down in my bed, I felt the room just fill up with evil spirits or demons, or, whatever you want to call them. Like, I just felt like the room was full. There were hundreds of them in there, and they hated me, and I was terrified. It was such a strong, evil presence. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. And this is at, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning. I called Sarah and described what was going on. She's like, Sean, like, say a prayer. You've got the priesthood, like, basically like do something about it in a nice way, in a loving way. But it was
Right,
basically like, you
right,
can do something about this.
right.
Um, and I didn't. I was so just paralyzed with fear. I sat there for like 20, 30 minutes, just laying in bed and waiting for it to pass. And finally, after a little while, it did. Um, and it was probably about an hour later, I finally was able to feel enough calm and enough peace that I could go to sleep. But I just sat there. I didn't do anything about it. I could have prayed. I could have, used the priesthood and cast him out. And I just sat there. Um, and a couple of days later, I had a temple recommend interview with the stake president, or one of the stake presidency, and actually told him, like, hey, we walked through the questions, and I was like, can I just, get your opinion on something? Like, something weird happened, and told him what happened. And he probably said the worst thing that the last thing I needed to hear in that moment, which I don't think was intentional by any means, but basically said, wow, you must be so righteous if something like this were to happen to you.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. And I just remember thinking, if this is what righteousness is, like, I'm done. I'm out. Like, I did not sign up for this. Um, and I was like, looking back, it took me a long time to realize this, which should have been so obvious in the moment. That was the moment when I stopped fighting. That was the moment when I, I stopped reading scriptures. I stopped saying prayers, stopped going to church as often, stopped going to the temple, right? Like, stopped doing those things that would allow me to fight my pornography addiction. But over the next 2, 3 years, it slowly went down this path of using pornography more and more. Um, no longer, like I said, no longer praying, no longer reading scriptures, no longer going to church. Um, Telling Sarah I didn't want to go to church, telling her I didn't want to be a part of it. Um,
Mhm.
and all of this, a lot of this stemmed from this one event. And I was so angry. I was so angry at myself for not doing anything about it. I was angry at God for letting it happen. I was just so upset, and I was holding that in, not knowing, not even knowing that I was upset about this. As weird as that is to say.
What was Sarah's reaction when you told her that you didn't want to go to church anymore?
She was devastated. This is after, um, so we moved from Utah to Texas to Virginia, and I think I told her in Virginia, and this was right before COVID hit, right before the church, no one was going to church, and so I kind of had an out, not knowing that COVID was going to hit, but I kind of had an out. Um, but in Texas, I told her at some point that I wasn't sure if I wanted kids. And that was huge. That was that was something that I thought might split our marriage apart. It didn't. It almost did. It didn't. I thought when I told her that I didn't want to go to church, didn't want to be a part of the church anymore, I thought that would split our marriage apart. It almost did. It didn't. But Sarah was devastated. She's the only active member in her family. She's number 7 out of 8 kids, and just felt like for a while, felt like I could kind of be her rock and her fallback when her family would inevitably say something rude or mean or offensive or a snide comment, and she'd be like, "Oh, well, I can talk to Sean about that, and he can talk me through it, and or if he's there, he can respond." And so once I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore," I think like she felt like the carpet was pulled out from under her a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, when we got married, the plan was we're gonna have kids, we're gonna be in the church, we're gonna, like
Yeah.
happy LDS family together,
Mhm.
and this is what we all signed up for. And one by one, I'm just pulling those things out from under her, going, "No, I don't know if I want that. No, I don't know if I want that." And so she was devastated.
Yeah. So, did you feel like your belief in the church, like, was it specifically tied to like that experience in your addiction, or had you like gone into like ex-Mormon Reddit or like CES letter? Like, where did you go in terms of like, you know what I'm saying? Did you dive
Yeah.
into that pool, or was it just, I'm done and I'm out?
No, so I didn't dive into like any of the anti-Mormon stuff. I have friends that had left the church and they were like, "Hey, let me send you this." And I'm like, I'm good."
Yeah.
And I remember a specific conversation with Sarah saying, "Yeah, like this is something that brings you peace and brings you happiness and joy." Like I was a terrible husband at that point. Even outside of the pornography addiction, I would like there's things that she brings up and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why did you stay with me?" Like I was so mean. Um, but this is probably the one good thing where I said, "Hey, this is something that brings you a lot of happiness. Like, why would I try to take that away from you? If you have questions, if you have things that you want to know, like I may not believe this anymore. I was still a missionary. I still probably know the answer. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh, let me lead you down this path and see if I can get like this is something you like and this is something you enjoy." So for me, I just walked away, and it as if you don't read scriptures, you don't go to church, you don't say your prayers long enough, at some point you're just not gonna believe in something, right?
Mhm.
And for me, that ended up being the gospel of Jesus Christ. Um, and um, I just felt like I needed a break from everything, um, from religion, from God, from everything. I just felt so overwhelmed, which is ironic because like I wasn't really doing a whole lot, but I just felt so overwhelmed with all of it. Um, and like I just felt like I needed a break. Um, but yeah, I just walked away. I never went down that rabbit hole of like anti-Mormon literature or anything like that. Never felt the need to.
Mhm. Did you tell your family, like, I'm out of the church, like, outside of Sarah, and what was their reaction to it?
So I told my parents, um, and they tried to kind of stage an intervention is the best way to describe
Okay.
it. Sarah and I came home at some point, while we were living in Virginia, and they were like, "Hey, come upstairs, like we want to talk to you guys." And we're just like, "We're downstairs with everybody." Okay, that's weird. So I don't think Sarah knew about it. But my parents were just kind of like, "Hey, like we think you're doing the wrong thing. We don't think that you took your church attendance super seriously in Texas." They were right. You don't feel like you've been, reading scriptures or saying prayers enough, in which they're right on both accounts, right? They were saying things that were all correct, but things where I was like, I don't care. Like you can
Mhm.
want me to go back to church. I don't doesn't mean I'm going to.
Mhm.
I didn't tell my other siblings. One brother was recently home from a mission. I did brother and sister that were both in high school. And similar to with Sarah, I didn't feel like I wanted to take something away from them if it was something that brought them happiness. I
Mhm.
wasn't going to lie to them if they asked me if they were asking me questions, but I also didn't want to be the impetus for them falling away from the church and falling away from a lifestyle that brought them peace.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So really just told Sarah and my parents.
So, meanwhile, you're going through this, like, I mean, I don't even know if you'd call it like a faith crisis because you had just like kind of made it doesn't seem like it was like you were in crisis mode. You were just kind of like, I'm done, like I'm out.
Yeah. I
Um,
just I felt like I was done with like religion.
Meanwhile, during this, you're still very much struggling with pornography.
Oh, it continued to get worse.
Okay.
And I correlate the two pretty heavily, where as my faith decreased, my pornography usage went up.
And was Sarah aware of this struggle? You hid it the whole time.
Yep.
Did
Yeah.
she feel like, I mean, looking back on it, did she feel like the different, like this spirit in the home, or like did she have any inclination of what was happening?
You know, it's hard to say. Um, the reason I say that, our relationship was not in a good place, as you can imagine, right? Like
Yeah.
the two main things that we had decided we wanted when we got married was kids and staying in the church and priesthood in the
Mhm.
home, right? Things like that.
Right.
And I was going one way, she was going another. And so as a result, I our relationship was in a really rocky spot anyways.
Mhm.
And so, she hasn't at least said anything to me where, oh, I could tell this was happening the whole time. When I did come clean, when we moved back to California, a little while later, like she didn't know it was happening. Maybe, if you asked her, I bet you she could look back and say, oh yeah, looking back, I can see the
Yeah.
signs, or I can see, different things. But in the moment, I don't think so.
Mm.
But that
Okay.
was also because of just how bad our relationship was
Yeah.
at the time. It was
Right.
not in a good spot.
Right. Okay, so you had been moving all over from Texas, Virginia, California, all these
Mhm.
places, and you're just totally out of the church now,
Yep.
still massively struggling with pornography. What happened after that?
So we moved back to California, and a couple months later, we went on a trip for like Valentine's Day, and come back, and a couple days later, I come clean with everything. There wasn't like I wasn't caught. There wasn't necessarily a reason to do it. I just like our trip for Valentine's Day, it was okay. Right. And it was supposed to be this like fun trip for both of us. And like we fought during part of it. And I was just like, like we're going towards divorce. Like that's just, it was pretty clear to me. And so I was just kind of like, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just get it over with. As part of me leaving, like I'll just tell her like, hey, I've been using pornography for the last X number of years. And like that'll help with, she'll just be mad at me and be like, okay, we're both just done. And so I asked her for a divorce and told her that I was using pornography, and we separated. She was understandably pissed off. Um, and I had most of my stuff packed up already because I figured she'd want to kick me out. We were staying at her parents' place, which not ideal to have this conversation. But we were staying at her parents' place. I told her what was going on. Packed up. Went over to a hotel down the road. Talked to my cousin for a little while, and just felt like, okay, this is it. Like we're gonna get divorced, and I'm gonna start a new life. Basically, my dad came over that night, and it was pretty late. It was a little after midnight. He came over and was like, "Hey, do you have a pornography addiction?" And for the first time ever, I said yes. My dad doesn't show a lot of emotions very often, and so when after I said yes, I looked up and there were tears in his eyes. Basically, saying like, hey, you can fight through this, you can work through this. And I don't know how. I don't see a way out, which was both manipulative and true, right? I wanted
Yeah.
it to be true. I didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to, I knew what it would take, more or less, not specifically, but more or less what it would take. But I also didn't really see a way where that was possible. And so the next day, that's when they said, hey, do you want to come over for dinner? Sure. I show up. My dad comes in 2 minutes later and he's like, hey, jump in the truck. Okay. And on the way, he told me, we're going to the Stake Center. We're going to an addiction recovery meeting. And I was like, oh, all right.
You're
I
like,
guess we're going to an
okay.
addiction recovery meeting. Um, and so we go to the meeting and I was so nervous. I didn't want to know anyone there. I didn't want anyone to see me. And one of the first people that I see when I walk in is my first Elders Forum president that I ever had.
Oh man.
I know. And I was just like, oh no, like he's gonna judge me. And like I don't even know if I read the steps. I don't know if I right, because in the meeting,
Yeah.
you read the 12 steps, you read one of the steps more in depth. I might have passed on those. I definitely didn't share. And after the meeting, my dad knew a bunch of the people in there. He's sitting around talking, and I just want to leave. And there's a guy who is now my sponsor. He came up to me after the meeting and he was like, hey, like, I'm so and so, like, I'm not going to use his name, but I'm so and so, great to meet you. And I was like, hey, like, I don't know how often I'm coming. I'm kind of quiet. I kind of keep to myself. Like, great to meet you, man. And now, like, I call this guy multiple times a week, and I love him. He's awesome. He's been a huge part of my recovery. But it was just so funny where, hearing him tell the story where he's like, yeah, I didn't know if he was coming back. But yeah, so we're sitting there after the meeting, and I'm just trying to like stand in a corner and talk to nobody and just get out of there. And my dad talked to me on the way home, and he was like, hey, what do you think? And I was like, well, I'll do it, but you can't go. Like, I can't have you there.
Yeah.
And we didn't even get food. We didn't get food on the way home. I was so hungry. Like, we went home, he dropped me off. I got my car, and I think I went to Chick-fil-A or something afterwards. I was so hungry. It's like 9:30 at night. But that was my first experience going to an addiction recovery meeting.
So what was your because you were out of the church at this time.
Yes.
And I'm
Yep.
really curious to know this because we're missionaries in a addiction recovery meeting. And not everybody's in the church. And,
Yeah.
it's that comes to the meeting. And so I'm curious, this is really interesting for me to hear. What was your experience of the church elements and talking about the gospel in the meeting? What was your experience of that first time?
I figured it would be a part of it. Just, we're at an LDS church. There's probably going to be, right. I didn't know what the 12 step, I'd heard of them, right? Most people have heard of AA.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the extent that I had heard of any sort of 12 step meeting. But I figured that it would be, once I knew it was the 12 steps, and as we were reading through each of the 12 steps, the first one is, basically admit that you're powerless to overcome your addiction and, turn your will over to God, more or less. I'm paraphrasing. I should know this.
Yeah.
I've been going
Yeah.
for 5-6
Yeah.
years, right? I should know
Yeah.
this by heart. And so once I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, this is 12 steps with religion or with spirituality or with, I don't remember the specific thought, but, with God and Christ involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like, oh man, like, all right, I'm not going to do the research to find a different one. And so like, I'll just go to this one. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to bring Christ or God into this. Like, I didn't want a relationship with God when I first walked in the door, but I was just like, yeah, like, sure. Right. Similar with Sarah. Like, if people feel like he helps them, great. I just don't feel like he helps me.
Mm.
And so like, I didn't have a problem with it. I wasn't stoked about it, but I didn't have any issues with it.
So you go to your first meeting,
Yep.
you're like, did you leave feeling like, I have hope for this? Or like, what was your overall takeaway from the meeting?
Um, my overall sense of the meeting was I felt like the least broken toy in the toy box full of broken toys.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny because I swear that is like always what people think when they go to a meeting. Like, these people are so messed up. Like, I am the least messed up. What am I doing
Yep.
here?
Yeah, exactly. Where like they were like, man, I had to surrender my will to God and I had to just like let him take over. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, what do you like you can do good things. Like you don't need this. What are you doing? It was just so backwards from what I had thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what got you to your next meeting?
Honestly, just like as bad as I was at keeping commitments with anybody and anything, like I told my dad I would go and he introduced me to the guy who ran the meeting at the time, who was in his ward, was a great guy. And you probably know him. His name is Jay. Jay was like, "Hey, like you're showing up, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll show up." And then he reached out again on that Tuesday, was like, "Hey, you're showing up, right?" I guess so. And so I yeah, it was just somebody reaching out telling me, "Hey, I want to see you there." Um,
Wow.
so I had to convince myself. I think I bought myself like In and Out or something on the way up there, right? Had to kind of reward myself for going to a meeting, and
Mhm.
I had to do that for a while because I didn't want to go. Um, so I had to tell myself, all right, if I go to a meeting, I get a burger or I get, something, a milkshake. But really it was somebody reached out and said, I want to see you there.
Wow. That is so cool. Okay. I'm thinking about your dad, and it's like, it, I think about my own dad and my recovery journey, and it's like, man, aren't we just, it's amazing that he has this adult son that has this struggle, and he's like, I'm like, we're gonna do this. Like, we're doing this. And it was like the same sentiment from my dad, like just belief that sometimes that's what we need. Like, we need that somebody to believe in us that we can do it. And
Especially when like I didn't believe in myself.
right, right. Like, and then you have this individual from the meeting that cares enough to reach out to you and say, are you going to make it today?
Yeah. There was a couple of people in particular that early on metaphorically put their arms around me. In some cases, literally, but put their arms around me. And there was one in particular that came up to me and was like, Sean, I'm so glad that you're here. I love you, man. And I was like, I don't love myself. What do you like? Kind of like, really? Like, you don't know me. You don't know all the crap that, like, at this point, I don't know if I'd even shared anything. I'd showed up a couple of times and he was like, I'm just so happy you're here. And it was so great. Like, it was a sense of community and a sense of belonging that I hadn't had. I mean, in a very, very long time, if maybe ever.
Mm,
I just felt like there were people that cared and that loved and that didn't judge and that just totally get it.
yeah.
Um, and there were people that were, drug addicts and alcoholics and porn addicts and gambling addicts and did right. Not everybody was just a pornography addict. And it was men and women that were all just trying to be better. And it took me a long time to realize that, but that's, I felt so loved in that room. And that's really what kept me going back.
So, at what point did you start to talk to Sarah about, like, where were things with Sarah at this point?
Yeah. So in total, we were separated for about 9 months. Um, because once I came clean on everything and told her what was going on, it was like the day after the ARP meeting, she came over to the hotel and she was still pissed. She was like halfway through. I think she went like home and back like 3 different times. I was like 10 minutes away. It's not like it was a far drive, but she was like so caught up in do I see him? Do I not? I'm so mad at him. I want to talk to him. Right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we basically said, don't sign anything yet. Um, and she was like, let's see a therapist, let's see a couples therapist, go to ARP. I told her I went to a meeting. She's like, go to ARP, get a sponsor, work the steps, right? Didn't really know what that meant, but she was like, cool, if it's going to help, I'm on board.
Yeah.
And come to find out, she was understandably pissed off, and she turned to the Lord and she prayed. And the Lord was basically like, I know he's an idiot. Give him some time. Maybe not those exact words, but that's kind of what it felt like. And that's what she did. And so she came over and was so mad and was just like, let's work on this. Sarah is loyal to a fault, and I love her so much. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that she prayed and listened. Because what we have now is it's beautiful and it's amazing. Our daughter turns 1 tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
That just gave me the chills.
oh man, I didn't think I'd get this emotional, but um, yeah, but Sarah easily could have just said, "Hey, like, you were an idiot. You need to go work on yourself," which was very true. I definitely needed to. But she also took the time to say, you know what, there's things that I want to work on. And so she saw her own therapist. She started to go to the ARP meeting for family and friends, and family and friends of addicts. And that became our kind of weekly, I would go on Tuesday nights and she would go on Thursday, and we would do couples therapy. It felt like once a week, and I would get beat up on and attacked, and it was totally warranted. And, we just slowly started working. We started working things out, and it felt like, for the first time in 4 or 5 years, we had a very serious conversation, and we almost got divorced in the middle of that conversation. In the middle of us being separated for 9 months, we probably almost got divorced 4 or 5 times. But we decided to just keep going and just keep fighting, and yeah. So we, slowly it went from Sarah being pissed at me because of all these stupid things that I'd done for the last X number of years. And I'd lied and hid things and was secretive, to, at some point she's like, hey, I can start to see, I can see some changes. And, she had some hope that maybe this was going to work out. And, when we first went to our couples therapist, man, I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to share. I didn't want to open up. I didn't, but the therapist was like, if you don't talk, then I'm going to kick you out. And we're going to do couples therapy, me and Sarah. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to talk. I'll share. But like, I was so bad at expressing my feelings and my emotions, and didn't know how to do that in a healthy way. And, but as like, we worked through it, and we talked through the problems, and we talked through, and it was 95% things that I was doing, how to fix them. And I had to make a lot of changes really quickly, but, our relationship got better. And after about 9 months, like, I still didn't, I wasn't back to church. Didn't have a relationship with God. Like, I wasn't doing, wasn't any of that. But after about 9 months, there was a lot of changes, and I asked Sarah to move back in with me, and we got our place together, and lived right across the street from the beach. There's beach, and then the big like parking area, and then condos, and we lived in those condos. And it was actually, I didn't know it at the time, but Sarah and I both grew up going to that beach, and she had a dream of living in those condos across the
Oh my
street.
gosh, how cool.
It was super cool. Yeah, so we got to live there for about 2.5 years. But yeah, it was a slow process. I mean, I don't know, 9 months looking back on it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but when you're in the thick of it for 9 months going, are we staying together? Are we not? Do I want to stay together? There were so many question marks. But Sarah's so, loyal to a fault
Sounds
at
like a
times.
literal angel.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, God was like, hey, he's an idiot, but give him some time. You know, it'll be okay.
How did you start to rekindle your relationship with God?
So that took about 18 months of going to ARP. Um, I was stubborn like crazy, right? No one that walks into that room for the first time is in a great spot. No one's winning at life when they first walk into that room.
Right.
But I was just so stubborn. Um, I didn't want a relationship with God. And after about 18 months of hearing people say, you know, more or less like, hey, Christ helped me, or through his atonement, I received strength, or God helped me, right? Like some iteration of God or Jesus Christ helped me, or the Spirit whispered this to me. I was just kind of like, all right, like I get it. Um, and um, at this point, it's been almost 3 years. Almost 3 years ago, I made two decisions. I was like, all right, I'm not like going back to church. That's not the goal. The goal is not to go back to church, but the goal is let me try to understand who Jesus Christ is. And I have to have a little bit of faith and I'm paraphrasing, there's a scripture that says, if you know me, you know the Father, right? So if I understand who Christ is, then I know who God is, because I had this very negative view of God. I'll call it Old Testament view of God, where it's like hellfire, damnation, and like, the Parks and Rec, like right to jail, like that's like right to hell, right? Like that was kind of the view I had of God, where like he wants to send me there anyways, so like might as well. And I just had this very negative view of him. So like, why would I want someone like that in my life? Um, and so after about 18 months, I was like, all right, let me read through the four gospels and let me just try to understand who Christ is. Because we all know he did miracles and he healed people and right, all these things, but why? You know, who is the person behind the miracles? Um, and it started super slowly. I would read scriptures like once every 2 weeks, once every week. I wasn't praying at first. And then slowly, like the Spirit just slowly worked on me, where I started to read more often. And it was a couple times a week. And I would pray a couple times a week. And then it got to the point where I was reading almost every single day. Um, and one of those days, I talked about earlier how one of the key things that pushed me away from God and pushed me towards addiction was an experience with a lot of kind of evil spirits. But one day I was down by Strands Beach, and it was like 10:30 at night. One of the things I don't like the beach, but I'll go at night when it's just you got white noise and it's pretty. Like that's the time where I like the beach. But there's these benches kind of by Strand Beach, and I was sitting there just watching the waves. I was reading scriptures, and I said a prayer. And as I was sitting there, um, there's a super bright light, like from a boat, right? There's a super bright light off in the ocean, just pointing towards the land in general. And I could see, like, as I was reading scriptures, like I would see like people walking by, and I'd look up and there was no one there. And after two or three instances of this, I went, oh, like I'm not alone out here. There's other people just out and about, like, from spirit world, or, whatever you want to call it. And it wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just like, oh, there's other people out here with me. And I started to walk home, and I got kind of there's a part where the concrete meets the wooden kind of pier. It's not really a pier. I don't know another word for it, but I guess the boardwalk. And as I was walking, um, there's this railing that starts to go up the hill, and I saw this hand on the railing, and I got this really bad, really dark feeling. And I knew that once again, there was something there waiting for me. And in that moment, instead of being paralyzed by fear, I prayed. And more or less, right, I wasn't praying a whole lot at that point. I wasn't, I was in like Mark. I was still early in my journey of reading scriptures. And the prayer was more or less, hey man, right, addressing God, hey man, like I'm scared right now. I feel like there's something out here. Can you help me? I just need to go up the hill, and I just need to get home. Um, and I felt like there was, um, I felt like there was like 50 people around me, um, just surrounding me. And walked up the hill, walked up the stairs, and I could still kind of feel this negative presence, but it was so far back there, it didn't stand a chance of getting through all those people. Um, I felt like it was grandparents. I felt like it was friends, people that, maybe I knew before I came here, or, um, I didn't know exactly who it was, but when I got to the top of the stairs, I kept walking and they stopped. And I turned around expecting to see people. They were so real. Um, and there was no one there, but, just the same way that I'm seeing you right now, and I can, like, that's how real they were. Um, and, that was one of probably, that was the key moment in me going, God's got my back. He loves me. And, man, sorry. From that day forward, I did my best to try to listen for the Spirit and kind of see where that took me. And, that was, I mean, if I had to guess, it was probably February or March. It was pretty early on in the year. I finished the four Gospels. It took me about 6 or 7 months. I read through them pretty slowly. And like I said, I was really trying to study, who is Christ, not just to read through it. And so when I finished it, I was like, well, like, what do I do now? Like, I did what I planned on, and I didn't think I'd have another 5-6 months left at the end of the year. And I had this thought, it was very clear, which was read the Book of Mormon. And I was like, no. I know where that goes. Like, I'm good. And so a couple weeks passed, and once again had this thought, hey, read the Book of Mormon. And once again pushed it off, didn't want to do it. And so one night, finally, it was like, dude, read the Book of Mormon. And I was like, okay, fine, right? Third time's a charm. Fine, I'll do it. And I started reading out of the Book of Mormon. I kept it a secret. I didn't tell Sarah. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell friends. Like, I was like, I'm not telling anybody. If this is real, I'm finding out for myself. And I don't want anyone else to know. And in December, right before Christmas, I think 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas, I was down in El Salvador. And I was down there mostly for work. It was kind of a fun work trip. We got to jump off waterfalls and stuff, but then it was, work trip.
Those are my
And
favorite.
yeah, those are great. But so we got back to where we were staying, our kind of little complex where we were staying at. We got back there a little bit early, had dinner, and yeah, I think at this point I was in Mosiah, not super early into the Book of Mormon, but not, super far into it, but I was probably somewhere in Mosiah. And I read a chapter, and as soon as I set my phone down, I had this thought where it was like, hey, you know where this is going. You know the promise in Moroni, right? Like, at some point you're going to get there. Why not just pray about it? And I was like, nah, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, at that point, like, my Sunday routine, like, every once in a while I go to church, but my Sunday routine was walk to Starbucks, get a coffee and a blueberry scone. Like, it was great. It was nice. But yeah, so I was like, I don't really want to do that. And the thought came back again where it's like, just pray about it. And so I decided, you know what? If it's not true, then it's not true. And, I don't have to change anything. I'm still a good person doing good things. Like, I changed a whole lot. Sarah and I had a great relationship. I was going to continue to go into ARP either way. I was going to continue on this path towards being a better person and being a better husband. But if it is true, then yeah, there's things I need to change, but I need to know. And so down in El Salvador, I got down on my knees and I prayed about it. And I received a very clear answer that the Book of Mormon is true. I received that answer and I didn't tell anybody for a couple of weeks, because then I was nervous about different things. I was like, well, I'm still not ready to go back to church all the time. I'm not ready to go to the temple. I'm not right. There were so many like, okay, well, I'm not ready for all the commitment yet. But little by little, I was able to work with my bishop, and I like to say I accidentally got a temple recommend. I talked to him and I was like, hey, like, I'm sure there's more things I need to work on. At some point in the next little while, I want to go to the temple. I'm not there yet. And he was like, nah, you want to do the record? You want to do the interview? And so I was like, sure. Got the temple recommend on accident. And my first day back in the temple, it was probably 3 to 6 months after that. It was a while later. But I went and did initiatories, and I was so nervous. I went to work. I don't think I was wearing a white shirt. I didn't have my temple bag. Like, I had like none of the stuff. I was just like, I'm showing up. Like, this is all I can do right now. But I was doing initiatories, and I was sitting, there's like a little bench you sit on right next, or while I was waiting. And there was a guy there, and he was like, oh, where are you from? And we were just talking, and I was like, honestly, like, I'm nervous. I haven't been here in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And he's like, why? Like, what, why haven't you been to the temple in 5 or 6 years? And I was like, well, I had this pornography addiction that I'm working through. And, was just able to kind of share with him a little bit of like, I walked away from the church. I came back and I had this pornography addiction. And, he like clapped my leg and he was like, dude, I am so excited for you. Like, you get to share this and you get to help so many people. Like, that is so awesome. Like, welcome back. I'm so excited you're here. And did initiatories, went into the celestial room, and I just felt like I was home. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all those people for 18 months stubbornly telling me, hey, let God into your life. It gets better, because it does. And just, I'm grateful that sometimes the Spirit had to smack me upside the back of the head, but he was able to bring me back. I'm so grateful.
I think that like one of the coolest parts about doing this podcast is seeing how people's heartache that they just can't even imagine how they're going to get out of it, and they feel so hopeless and helpless, and how God takes something so hard and he turns it into something so beautiful. And that is something that is my favorite. Like, I feel so honored to be able to interview people and see this transformation happen in their life, and how God can take the hardest challenges and turn them into something beautiful. And it's like, it's so crazy how you and I were working at Oliva at some point during this story. I don't even know when that was. Like, it was some point.
Before I came clean.
Okay. So it was like, yeah. And like how our paths crossed there. And then you're at lunch with Steve, and then Steve reaches out, and I'm like, yes, let's get him on the podcast. And during that time, like, that I knew you back then, you were in the midst of all of this struggling. Then you were like about to lose your marriage, about to lose these things. You were just in such a dark place. And now, like, hearing you share your testimony with the tens of thousands of people that are going to listen to this episode, and how it just gives hope to everyone that hears it, and how your pain that you went through is now given a purpose in providing a roadmap for other people who may be facing these things, or wives of husbands that struggle with pornography, or people that have an addiction and feel like they can't come back from that, or people who don't have a relationship with God. And there's so much hope in this message. And I just thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. It was my honor to be able to interview you.
Hey, thanks for letting me come on and share a little bit.
Yeah.
It's it's been an incredible journey. Funnily enough, Sarah and I have talked, and we were just like, it sucked going through it in the moment, but we wouldn't change a single part of it. As weird as that is to say, right?
No,
Looking back, but
yes, it's like everything I knew you back then, and like you have this like depth and this perspective, and I'm sure Sarah feels the same, that she's gone through all of this and now she has an understanding that she wouldn't have otherwise been able to have had she not walked through this with you.
yeah, yeah. So what's great is now at this point, like there's still things that are triggering, and there's still things that in the past would have pushed me towards pornography. That doesn't necessarily go away. Um, right. I don't want to, like, it's not a daily thing. It's not a weekly thing. It's just from time to time it pops up. But now, instead of turning to pornography to fill, that hole or that void, I don't remember the specific word that you used, but, instead of turning to pornography, I go to the scriptures and I pray and I turn to the Lord and I use the 12 steps, and I, reach out to my sponsor and to other people in the program, and you connect. And when you connect with family and friends, it's a wonderful thing. But when you connect with heaven, it's beautiful. Um, and just to, I don't know how to convey it well, because I'm still not great at expressing my emotions, but or my feelings, but um, the love that God has for every single one of us, regardless of what we've done, is incredible. There is nothing that anyone can do where the atonement cannot reach them. Um, I have the opportunity to work with the young men in our ward, and at times, I haven't shared this entire, from end to end, the entire story, but I'm very straightforward with them. Like, hey, I had a pornography addiction, and the room gets real quiet. You say you're pornography in a room full of young men, it gets real quiet. Um, but I was teaching a lesson on the atonement, and I just asked him, like, hey, list sins, basically, and I would put check boxes or check marks next to them. For just about every single one, I had a check mark next to him. And finally, a kid said, hey, what's the check mark for? And I said, that's for either me or somebody that I know personally has repented of this sin. And I can see some people start to think, like, oh, I've done that. Okay, I can repent from this. It's okay. And when we are willing to submit to our Heavenly Father, He can do more with our life than we could ever want and hope to do. Like I said, Sarah and I have a beautiful 1-year-old tomorrow. And it's been so fun and so hard. But it's so much more than what I ever could have made of with my life. And it's because of the atonement, and it's because of Jesus Christ and the Heavenly Father and their infinite love for all of us.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I just can't even tell you how grateful I am that you had the courage to come on here and share your story with the world and have such a beautiful illustration of the Savior's atonement in your life.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you doing the podcast. It's a great platform to let everyone everyone hears so many stories about recovery and coming back, and so thank you for doing this as well.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Surf Clothing is one of our favorite brands. They have been supporting us since the very beginning. We love them so much. I think one of the things that I like about Surf so much is that my husband is literally obsessed, and I brought him in here to share his experience with Surf Clothing. So Jesse, tell us.
I love Surf Clothing. This is the best shirt that I've ever owned for church and professional purposes. It's got four-way stretch, which makes it really nice because not all the time I'm at my desk. Oftentimes I'm moving and out and about. So it's really nice to have a flexible shirt that moves with me. I know that it's got a mesh collar that I love. I think the purpose of that is really to prevent stains, but it's also super comfortable. It's way more comfortable around my neck. You know, if I'm at church or in business meetings with a tie, or whether I don't have a tie, it's really comfortable. It's got arm vents, which I love because I'm kind of a bigger fella. It helps me so that I can be a bit breathable, and I love it.
And also, you can get 15% off a shirt from Serve by using the code COMEBACK.
Want to give a shout out to Mike's Auto Shack. You guys may remember him from our last event, but this guy is as good as they get. I love him so much. And he's actually helped Trent, our director of operations for Comeback Foundation, find a car. My husband and I are going to be using him to buy our next car. He is the best. Mike and his team have been helping find quality cars for over 20 years. You pay Mike a flat fee and he sources quality used cars from top auctions. You name your price and Mike will do everything he can to find the perfect used car for you. Mike has helped hundreds of families find the perfect car over the years, and no matter what you're looking for, if Mike is unable to find your car in your budget, you pay nothing. Reach out to Mike today to find your next car. Mike'sAutoShack.com or call 702-457-3536. A lot of people have asked us how they can support the podcast, and we have created a Comeback Podcast merch line on our website, www.comebackpodcast.org. All of the money made from the merch goes right back into the podcast. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast and you want to purchase some merch, we would love it. Check it out. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the Comeback Podcast and listening to our episodes. It would mean so much to us if you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps other people be able to find us, and we want to share this message to everyone.